We all sort of think we know what architecture is, don't we? Putting up buildings, houses, offices, all the functional stuff around us.
Right, the basics.
But what if that's only like part of the picture? Our sources today, they actually suggest there's a real line between just building and what we can honestly call architecture.
A distinction.
Yeah, it's about something extra, something that lifts construction up. We've got this really fascinating mix of writings here, observations on different styles, thoughts on art, society.
A real variety.
Exactly. And our mission really is to unpack that difference. What is it that takes a structure beyond just being useful and, as one source puts it so nicely, impresses on its form? Certain characters, venerable or beautiful. Let's dive in.
Okay, so maybe the best place to start is just thinking about plain old building.
Right.
Our sources define it pretty simply. Putting pieces together to make a significant structure. Could be a church, a house, maybe even a ship,
Okay, functional things.
The main goal there is function, utility, getting the job done. But architecture, it takes those basic needs, the things a building has to do, and then it layers something else on top.
Something more.
Yes, it impresses on its form certain characters, venerable or beautiful. It's about the bits that are above and beyond its common use.
So it's not just about keeping the rain out. It's about the intention behind it, the how and why.
Exactly that. And to make this clearer, the sources give us some categories. Think about devotional buildings, churches, temples. They're built specifically to honor something sacred, right?
Yeah.
Or memorial structures, monuments, tombs, built to remember people, events. These clearly aren't just about shelter. They have a purpose that's, well, inherently deeper than just basic utility.
And this is where that interesting idea, the lamp of sacrifice, comes in. This notion of offering the absolute best you can in the design for these kinds of buildings.
Precisely. It's not just about splashing cash, is it?
No, the sources say it's more about the intent, the effort.
That's it. The lamp of sacrifice gets into this deeper principle. The actual effort, the quality of the work, the sheer dedication poured into a structure that's meant for something, well, higher. The text even suggests that when this spirit of sacrifice is really there, the more obvious the labor involved, the more beautiful we might find it.
So you can see the work that went into it.
Yeah, think about some detail that's been painstakingly hand-carved. Maybe it's got a tiny flaw, But that imperfection actually speaks volumes about the human effort involved. It has its own value.
Right.
So that's maybe the first big idea. Real architecture involves this deliberate offering of our best work, a kind of spirit of dedication that goes way beyond just putting materials together.
It's like the difference between something churned out by a machine and something truly handcrafted with care.
That's a great analogy.
Mhm.
Our sources definitely contrast that sort of poorly executed, mass-produced decoration with the real value of dedicated human effort, even if it's not technically flawless. They even give an example, the central gate niche at Rouen Cathedral. It's described as this exquisite piece of pure flamboyant work.
Yeah.
So that super ornate, intricate Gothic style.
Wow.
It's the visible care, the skill that lifts it into that realm of architecture.
Right, so it's not just assembly. There's intention, effort, maybe even love trying to create something that goes beyond pure function. Now, what happens when that intention gets a bit murky? Or maybe dishonest? That seems to lead us to the next idea, the lamp of truth.
Yes, the lamp of truth. This tackles what the text calls architectural deceits, and it breaks them down into three main types.
Okay.
First, there's falsely suggesting structure where there isn't any. Those dangly bits, pendants, and some late Gothic roofs. They look like they're holding things up.
But they're just decoration.
Exactly, that's one. Second is painting surfaces to mimic other materials, making wood look like marble is a classic example, or using paint to fake the look of sculpture.
The faux finish.
Right. And third, using cast or machine-made ornaments that are trying to pass themselves off as hand-carved work.
So basically, don't pretend your building is something it's not.
That's the core principle. Architecture should be truthful. It shouldn't lie about how it's built or what it's made of.
Don't lie with your building.
Yeah,
like that.
Exactly. Though there is a nuance here. The text does acknowledge something interesting.
Oh.
It says that when we, the viewers, actually understand how things are really built, then creating a feeling that contradicts the physical reality isn't necessarily deceitful.
How so?
Think about flying buttresses on a cathedral. They look incredibly light, almost delicate, right?
Airy, even.
But we know they're doing some serious heavy lifting, supporting immense weight. That's seen as okay because it engages our imagination based on knowledge, rather than deliberately tricking us.
That's a really fascinating distinction. It's about informed perception versus, like, outright trickery. What about new materials? I mean, iron must have been a big deal when it came along. How did that fit with truth?
Oh, it definitely sparked debate, according to these writings. The text acknowledges iron is strong, obviously,
Sure.
but it argues that if iron starts replacing traditional materials like stone for the main structural work, doing the job of columns or buttresses, then it actually detracts from true architecture.
Why? Because the rules were based on stone and wood.
Sort of, yeah. The principles of architecture, as understood then, had grown out of the properties of clay, stone, wood. So the argument is that you should first fully explore what you can do with those traditional methods, like careful stone cutting, fitting, dovetailing.
Push them to their limits.
Right, before you just jump to using metal for the main structural heavy lifting.
Okay, so explore traditional methods first.
Yeah.
What about surface treatments then? Plaster, paint, are they always deceitful?
Not necessarily. Plaster and paint are fine if they have an honest job to do, like protecting a surface or providing a smooth base for actual artwork, like gesso under a fresco.
Right, practical uses.
But using them deceptively, like scoring cement to make it look like cut stone blocks, that's called out as contemptible.
Ah, okay.
There's a cool example given, the illusionistic painting of the sky in the dome of Parma Duomo.
Oh, yeah.
It's seen as acceptable because, well, it's clearly a painting. It creates wonder, awe, but it's not trying to fool you into thinking the roof is actually open.
It's honest about being an illusion.
Exactly. And that's contrasted with, say, imitation granite used somewhere like the British Museum landing that's criticized as a blameworthy deception, trying to look like a more expensive material.
So, humble materials used honestly are better than fancy fakes.
That's the gist. A simple village church, stone and wood used plainly that rarely offends. But deceptive stucco, trying to be something it's not, that can.
Makes sense. What about gilding? Using gold, is that okay?
It can be. If it's used respectfully to express magnificence or sacredness, fine. But if it's just, lavish vanity showing off.
Then it's frowned upon.
Right. And interestingly, applied pictures or patterns, even if they were historically common in great art, are deemed sort of unarchitectural.
Why is that?
Because they're seen as a superficial layer,
Why?
not integral to the structure and less durable. The text even makes this really poignant point about natural aging.
Oh, yeah.
It says that materials allowed to weather naturally often gain a deeper beauty than even elaborate artificial carving. It compares the beauty of weeds growing in an old ruin favorably to meticulously carved stone.
Wow, that is a powerful image. The beauty of time versus artificial perfection. What about brick? That's a manufactured material.
Brick is okay, even when molded into shapes. Why? Because everyone knows brick is molded. It's honest about its nature.
As long as it doesn't pretend to be cut stone.
Exactly. And finally, the text really stresses studying details like tracery, those delicate stone patterns in Gothic windows. Giada's campanile is mentioned.
Why tracery?
Because it shows the evolving spirit of Gothic design, a shift from focusing on the solid wall to celebrating the elegance of lines and moldings.
Okay, so truthfulness in materials and how they're used is fundamental. Now, let's shift gears to the lamp of power. This sounds big, impactful.
It is, yeah. The lamp of power is all about how architecture expresses the power of the human mind, both in gathering all the necessary materials and then in governing how they're put together.
So mental power, not just physical size.
Both, really. Great architecture often gives you the sense of the immense human effort and, crucially, the thought that went into it, especially considering the scale. Sheer size, magnitude can definitely give a design a certain nobility.
Bigger can feel more impressive.
It can, but, and this is important, the sources are clear. Just being big doesn't excuse a design that's fundamentally weak or, thoughtless.
So it's not just bigger is better. The design has to earn the scale.
Precisely. Scale can enhance a good design, but it can't rescue a bad one. The text contrasts, for instance, the Northern European focus on intricate lines like that tracery we talked about, with the potential beauty of just broad, smooth surfaces, maybe using varied marbles effectively. It even suggests that choosing a shape that's close to a square for the main outline often helps create that sublime feeling, maximizing the sense of surface.
Interesting. even though squares can feel static sometimes.
Right, but in this context, it's about maximizing that impression of surface and mass. The Doge's Palace in Venice gets mentioned as achieving grandeur even with a more rectangular facade.
And the materials themselves play into this sense of power.
Oh, absolutely. There's a preference expressed for masonry that feels, well, confessed, natural. Stone that isn't overly smooth, joints that aren't perfectly invisible.
Letting the material speak for itself.
Kind of. It suggests that the effort spent on excessive smoothing might be better put towards increasing the building's overall scale or quality. And interestingly, the Lamp of Power also talks about architecture expressing life's struggles.
How?
It suggests architecture, as a deeply human art, should also convey the trouble and wrath of life, its sorrow, its mystery. And it does this through the deliberate use of deep shadows, gloom.
Like Rembrandt in building form. Rembrandtism, it says.
Exactly. That dramatic play of light and dark creates a powerful emotional experience. It's not always about brightness and clarity.
So there's a place for darkness, for drama, even melancholy in great architecture.
Definitely. The text talks about how different styles use light and shadow differently. Think light shapes against dark in Greek temples versus dark openings against light walls in early Gothic.
Different visual strategies.
Right. And it notes that in truly great periods, sometimes the detail, the energy of individual small parts was deliberately sacrificed for the sake of overall clarity and impact,
Yep.
making the big statement stronger.
Interesting trade-off.
Even things like the rounded forms in Greek architecture. The argument is they were likely chosen for symbolic reasons, representation, not just because they liked curves. And Venetian Gothic capitals, with those big, bold leaves and thick stems, praised for their powerful form.
And this light and shadow stuff applies even to details like tracery.
Yes, how light falls across tracery matters. Earlier architects apparently sought gradation, a sense of flatness, broad areas of shadow within the patterns. But ultimately, the text concludes that a building's majesty comes more from the basics, the weight and vigor of their masses. Meaning its bulk, how light and shadow are used dramatically, the quality of its color. These fundamentals are seen as more crucial to its power than just intricate details alone.
Okay, so power is about scale, honest materials, and that masterful, almost moody use of light and dark. Got it. Let's move to beauty. The lamp of beauty, this seems to link strongly to nature.
It really does. The core idea of the lamp of beauty is that genuine beauty in architecture comes from adapting forms that are common in the natural world, in external creation.
Taking cues from nature.
Essentially, yes. The text argues that once you get past basic competence, trying to invent beauty purely from abstract thought often fails. Real beauty requires looking at, imitating, or at least adapting natural forms.
Can you give examples?
Sure, it contrasts something like the Doric triglyph, seeing it as less directly imitative, with the beauty of a column resembling a tree trunk, or a pointed arch echoing the shape of leaves or petals.
So nature is the ultimate design guide.
That seems to be the perspective here. Purely abstract ornament, like, say, the Greek fret or key pattern, is even called monstrous if it doesn't have some basis in nature, whereas a simple rounded molding gets praised because it resembles pebbles.
Huh, interesting.
Even Lombard ornament, based on straight lines, gets a nod because it echoes crystalline structures, which are natural. The Tudor portcullis pattern, the net-like form, is natural, but the execution is sometimes seen as too rigid, too artificial.
What about carving actual flowers and leaves? That seems like a direct copy of nature.
Funnily enough, the text is a bit critical of literal copies, like carved garlands and festoons of flowers. It suggests that simpler, more fundamental forms derived from nature are often better, more architectural.
So abstraction based on nature rather than just copying it.
Maybe more like adaptation and understanding principles. It criticizes a modern Gothic drain pipe shaped like a furniture handle as just poor design, no connection to natural or appropriate forms. Context matters too.
How so?
Well, it notes that medieval wood decoration was often part of the house fronts where people actually lived, integrated, not just stuck on a shop front purely to lure customers in, you know?
Right, it belonged there.
Yeah. It uses this lovely image of a girl drawing water at a well as an example of natural beauty in a fitting context, contrasting it with artificial, contrived decoration.
So it's about understanding nature's principles, not just blindly mimicking its appearance and applying them thoughtfully.
Exactly. And while a painter might focus on capturing character, maybe sacrificing some precision, architecture, according to these sources, needs to show its calculation, its order, in how elements are arranged and proportioned.
Ah, proportion. Does it get into specific ratios?
It touches on it, but warns against getting lost in just collecting instances of proportions, losing sight of the practical application. It talks more generally about how moldings in Gothic windows create a sense of hierarchy, or how spires like Salisbury often have a clear two-part base and three-part main section. These are seen as principles of good proportion.
What about symmetry? Nature isn't always perfectly symmetrical.
Good point. Symmetry can be there, especially with imitative elements, but it's not essential. You can have an architectural treatment of natural forms, like leaves arranged on a capital, that feels balanced and beautiful without being strictly symmetrical. There was apparently debate between Gothic styles, some more abstract, like Salisbury, some more naturalistic, like certain French examples. The text argues for including perfect sculpture as part of architecture, but advises caution against focusing too much on literal imitation. Maybe carve capitals and white marble to emphasize form over exact realism.
And color. How does color fit into this natural beauty idea?
Color should feel inherent, natural, not just applied like paint on a toy. Natural objects have their color intrinsically, right? So purely decorative color patterns slapped onto graceful forms are called barbarous unless they follow natural principles like simple, large masses of color or zone colors like you see in a rainbow or certain minerals.
So no fussy, unnatural patterns.
Literally, no. Acceptable uses of color are seen in things like mosaic, bold, abstract, brilliant masses, and fresco. True architectural decoration is defined as including sculpture, mosaic, fresco, and also monochrome design.
Monochrome, like black and white.
Or shades of one color, yeah. It's seen as halfway between color and carving. The Elgin marbles are mentioned as using monochrome to enhance sculpture, and the facade of St. Michel of Lucca is highlighted as a masterpiece of pure monochrome design using serpentine stone.
Wow.
The description of the Lucca facade emphasizes its intricate details, its natural forms, even where parts are lost to time. And the section actually concludes by pointing to Eastern architecture, like Cairo mosques, as a kind of model, linking their almost ethereal beauty back to the simplicity and vastness of the desert, the wilderness.
Fascinating. That connection to something vital, essential, seems to lead perfectly into the next concept, the lamp of life. This sounds like it's about the human spark in the work.
Precisely. The Lamp of Life uses this analogy comparing the human soul being active or dormant to how vital energy shows up in beautiful things.
Okay.
It argues that objects are truly noble when they carry the impress of the highest order of creative life, that is to say, of the mind of man. It's about the human mind actively shaping the world.
The maker's presence.
Yes. It questions whether you can even follow the best architectural rules properly without that genuine spirit, that vitality behind it. Can you just go through the motions?
So technical skill alone isn't enough.
Yeah.
You need soul.
That's the implication. Interestingly, it says that borrowing or imitating isn't automatically bad or lifeless. It depends how it's done.
How so?
If it's done with interest, meaning you transform the source material, engage with it, and with choice, show me you understand what you're borrowing and why, then it's okay. It mentions Raphael, Romanist builders, people who drew on tradition but made it their own.
So intelligent borrowing is a sign of life, not weakness.
Exactly. That frank acceptance of influence can actually show inner strength, the power to renew things. The Ducal Palace Angle Capitol in Venice is cited again, this time as showing incredible boldness, almost ignoring established rules to follow its own powerful instincts.
But that boldness can't just be an excuse for being sloppy, right?
Absolutely not. Frankness doesn't excuse lazy repetition, and being audacious doesn't excuse work that's just indolent or self-serving. The text stresses the importance of perfect and most delicate finish in the very best architecture,
But also,
recognizes progressive finish in art that's still developing. A key sign of dead, stagnant architecture is being afraid of imperfection, being taken aback by it.
whereas living architecture isn't afraid to be a bit rough.
Or, more accurately, it shows a certain contempt of exact symmetry and measurement, especially in its early vital stages. This isn't about error. It's about prioritizing spirit over rigid uniformity.
You give an example.
Yeah, the text literally provides measurements from St. Michel of Lucca showing doorways and spaces that are intentionally, measurably asymmetrical. Not mistakes, but deliberate variations. Same with the changing number of arches in the arcades at Pisa Cathedral.
So it's like a living thing, not perfectly symmetrical, embracing variation, showing the human hand.
That's the feeling, yes. It argues Byzantine workers built from intuition, resulting in this amazing life in subtlety. It points to specific niches in French cathedrals, Rouen and Saint-Lô, as examples of daring departures from strict rules, possibly for symbolic reasons, showing incredible license with form.
It keeps coming back to the human element.
It really does. The value of the human heart and mind in the work is seen as irreplaceable. Even a, quote, bad workman, if they care, will show moments of delight or attention in their work.
You can see where they got engaged.
Exactly. Contrast that with machine work or work done lifelessly by rote. It uses the analogy of poetry read without feeling versus poetry read with deep understanding. You can see the difference in carvings made by someone careless versus someone truly engaged.
And this has implications for modern times, even back then.
Yes. While suggesting geometric color mosaic might be a good avenue for ornament then, it strongly argues against machine-made ornaments and cast iron. These short and cheap and easy ways, it claims, ultimately hold back true art. They lack that vital human touch.
Okay, that's a powerful argument for the life in architecture. Finally, we reach the lamp of memory. This sounds like it's about history, legacy.
Precisely. The lamp of memory presents architecture as central to how we remember our past. It carries a sacred influence because of this role.
More than just history books.
Yes, it contrasts the perhaps cold facts of written history with the living, tangible record that architecture offers. A building stands as a witness. And it gets quite forceful here. It calls it an evil sign of a people when their houses are built to last for one generation only. It emphasizes the sanctity in a good man's house.
Wow, strong words. Connecting house longevity to morality.
Yes, it even links neglecting our homes, our hearths, to dishonoring deeper values. It argues that building durable homes isn't just about taste, it's a moral duty.
So buildings embody our collective memory, our values, and we have a duty to make them last.
That's the core argument. Those Venetian capitals are brought up again, the ones carved with history, virtues, vices, daily life details. They are literal history books in stone.
Visual history.
Exactly. And it suggests public buildings could be adorned similarly, thoughtfully. It laments the lack of public will for long-term thinking, planting forests for the future, building for generations yet to come, but insists these are duties.
A call for longer-term vision.
Definitely. It then makes a distinction between the sublime, which it ties to inherent mental character, and the picturesque.
Picturesque meaning.
Accidental qualities, often associated with age or ruin, like how shadow is used differently just for outline by some artists, as essential mood by Rembrandt, or as a dark background like on the Parthenon. But in architecture, it argues, the picturesque beauty of a ruin often conflicts with preserving the building's original character.
So we shouldn't romanticize decay too much if it means losing the original intent.
That seems to be the point. And this leads to a really crucial stance on restoration.
What's that?
It argues that truly restoring great architecture is impossible.
Impossible. Why?
Because the spirit, the unique touch given by the original maker, the life they breathed into it, cannot be recalled or replicated by someone else centuries later.
So restoration can never truly bring back the original.
According to this view, no. Our duty, therefore, is primarily to preserve what we have, to respect the work of past generations as it has come down to us.
Preserve. Don't try to remake.
That's the essence. This connects to a final lamp mentioned briefly, obedience. Not blind obedience, but liberty operating within the bounds of natural laws and sound principles.
Meaning?
It claims the great architectural leaps happened within established schools, shared traditions, accepted forms, from cottages to cathedrals, progress within a framework.
Not a free-for-all.
Right.
Yeah.
It argues that until some universal system of form and workmanship is adopted and, importantly, enforced, architecture will just languish. Learn the grammar before you try to write poetry, essentially.
Master the rules before you break them.
Something like that. It's quite critical of chasing novelty for novelty's sake, outside of established principles, seeing it as leading to bad outcomes. It advocates for putting resources into simpler, lasting things, well-built houses, useful public works instead of temporary luxury.
And focusing on meaningful work for people.
Yes, giving work that challenges and develops skill rather than just educating people above practical work. And it condemns jobs based purely on vanity or waste. It ends with a somewhat historical, perhaps culturally specific note about national character and resistance to external influences correlating with periods of honor.
Wow, okay. That covers a huge amount of ground. From the basic definition through truth, power, beauty, life, and now memory and obedience. It's crystal clear from this deep dive that architecture, in this view, is so much more than just building.
Absolutely. It's this complex, vital mix of intention, honesty, human expression, connection to nature, the maker's spirit, and the weight of history.
So maybe the thought to leave you, the listener, with is this. As you go about your day, really take a look at the buildings around you. Ask yourself, are they just serving a function? Or do they embody some of these deeper principles we've been talking about?
Yeah, does it feel like there's truth there? Power, beauty drawn from nature. Can you sense a human life in it or a connection to memory?
And what might the answer, the presence, or maybe the absence of real architecture tell us about our own values today? Our priorities as a society is definitely something to mull over.
Maybe you'll start seeing your everyday surroundings a little differently.
We hope so. We encourage you to revisit these ideas, maybe look again at your built environment with this new perspective.